Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly in 2024. This is YouTube's premium WTA show, and we're joined by, let's face it, tennis fandom's premium WTA man. It's Miles David. How are we doing, Miles?
Hey, Nick. I'm glad to be back on the channel to discuss my favorite tour, the WTA Tour, and get into the first week of the WTA season. I'm happy to be talking to you and happy to get into it. So let's do it.
Oh, it's going to be good to get into it. It's going to be good to get into it. Now, the question is, Miles, I think we should probably, do we start off with talking about the bigger tournament or the one that you really, really want to talk about?
What's the one I really, really, really want to talk about?
Let's talk about, since let's get the hype out of the way. Let's talk about Auckland.
I enjoy Auckland as a tournament, even if oh, you can see my shadow here. Look at that. That's funny. Even if there wasn't the winner that there ultimately was, I still would have enjoyed Auckland, and I thoroughly enjoyed it throughout the years. It's a nice, quaint tournament, if that makes any sense. Like, it looks intimate. I think I would enjoy it if I actually went, and it has a long history of some great winners. So it got one more technically this year.
Well, kind of, sort of. It's not a new
kind of, sort of.
But obviously, she's added herself to New Zealand tennis law. Imagine, like, if you were a New Zealand tennis fan and your primary experience of tennis is watching the Australian Open and Auckland. So Coco Gauff is the Auckland champion. She came from a set down to beat Elina Svitolina in the final. The only set that she's dropped in the entire tournament. Safe to say, maybe Svitolina was probably the toughest opponent she faced by ranking, by quality.
Would agree.
Talk to me, how do you assess Coco Gauff's performance in Auckland this week?
I think she did a really great job. Ultimately, anytime you can get your hands on the trophy at the end of a week, you've done something right. And I think she enjoys the conditions there. I think she looks at it as a great opportunity to kind of test out some things that she may have worked on in the off season. She came out looking pretty strong out of the get-go for the first couple of matches. Although you can say and argue that her level of competition wasn't the highest, but it is a WTA 250, so that goes with saying that there's a certain level of a certain tier of talent that comes with that. And she played who was across the net from her, and she handled them accordingly. And then in the final, she got tested by a former top 3 player. I think Svitolina is a former top 3 player, has won some big titles herself, is on the comeback trail, and playing arguably the best tennis she's ever played in her career, I think, from watching her for so many years. And she still got the W, Coco Gauff did. So all of those are check marks of positivity going into the first Grand Slam that she's ever gone into as a reigning Slam champion. There's a little bit of a different dynamic there. And raising a trophy the week before you do that is a great way to kind of get your momentum and confidence high. So yeah, good things.
I think there's nothing that you could say about Gauff's week that could be bad unless you really, really wanted to be nitpicky. Let's be honest.
Some people want to be nitpicky.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Not nitpicky, but nitpicky.
We know. Okay, we're both on tennis Twitter. Yeah, we know there are people out there who
exist,
but not nitpicky. We will get those later. But a little bit of a spoiler for you for later in the stream. Okay, so yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't think there's any much more superlatives we can really do about Coco Gauff. Really, I completely agree. I think she's kind of solidified why she's a top player at the minute. So I guess the other stories from Auckland, I would say, and feel free to throw any other stories that you think, actually, Nick, you've missed those. Svitolina, runner-up.
Mm-hmm.
Great start to the year. Mm-hmm. So for her, I mean, like, she pushed Coco Gauff in that match, it's fair to say, made it competitive. I really enjoyed the first set they played. It was a great exhibition of defensive tennis. But Svitolina also came through another really tough match against Emma Raducanu, who was the other big story of Auckland, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And There's one more story we might touch on later, but yeah, I thought she dealt with that situation really, really well. Obviously, Emma kind of came at her, Svitolina absorbed it, and then outlasted her.
Mhm.
But yeah, do you have any thoughts on Elina Svitolina's week?
I am continuously impressed every time I see her, and I was again impressed this week as well. There's a determination and bite to her shots that I don't remember being there before she took her maternity leave, and the way she can dictate off of the forehand, especially in crucial moments, is a new element to her game, because I've always thought that in high pressure situations she reverts to being a retriever, which she's really good at, but that doesn't always put you in the it never puts you in the driver's seat of controlling your own destiny. And a couple of times in that match where her back was against the wall, or it was a really high pressure situation, she swung out, and that was good to see. And I think that makes her a threat for top 10 contention this year. I think that would be huge for her if she could win a couple more titles or just win some big matches and find herself in the top 10, because the level is there. If she's taking a set off of the world number 3 in Coco Gauff and getting to finals, I think this is her second final since coming back from maternity leave. She won the title in Strasbourg before the French Open. So yeah, all of that combined, a Strasbourg title, Roland Garros quarters, Wimbledon semis, now a finalist here. She's playing well. And I think she is, we'll talk about this later, I think she's a threat at the Australian Open. Nobody's going to want to see her near them in their section.
No, she's a dangerous seed. What seed is she going to be in Australia?
I think she'll be maybe between 15 and 25, something along those lines.
Along those lines, yeah. I don't think she's made top 16. I think she's in that awkward one, which means that she'll be, if I'm
a
right,
third round opponent for some top seed, I think.
Yeah, top seed or
or
not
top 8.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she'd be a top 8 opponent, but maybe like 9 to 16.
Something
opponent.
like that, yeah. Math isn't my strongest suit, as I made a tweet about that earlier.
Yeah. Obviously, that's the live ranking. So let's have a look where she is now. Thank you, producer. Yeah, she's 23 at the minute. That will be because of all the withdrawals. That's going to move her up because Garcia's got the last spot.
Bencic is gone. Kvitova's gone. Keys is gone. So yeah, that's 3. Yeah.
So she's going to move up 4. So yeah, so Svitolina will be ranked 19 at the Australian Open, which, yeah, and then so I think she'd have a good chance against anyone ranked in that 9 to 16 bracket, and then that's a 4th round, and then suddenly you're looking at, okay, well, which top 16, which top 8 player are you going to end up playing?
None of them are going to be thrilled to see her in their section. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. Someone else who probably wasn't thrilled to see Svitolina so early in her section in Auckland was Raducanu, who got her comeback after not playing since May and having double wrist and ankle surgery all at the same time, more or less.
Rough.
Yeah, she said apparently she had to like ride around into this kind of weird Segway type thing with her knee on like a stand.
I saw that. I saw a picture of it. I thought
scooter type thing. Yeah, that just looked very awkward and inconvenient to live your life on. But yeah, I guess obviously British tennis fans went a bit mental the first couple of days, and we were very excited. And I thought Emma acquitted herself very, very well in that tournament. Just losing to Svitolina the way she did, I don't think she really had match points. Yes, she was up a break and a tie, mini break and a tie break. That doesn't mean very much, to be honest, especially how early she got that mini break. It was only 3-1. I think she showed the level that we kind of expected her to show when she was having a good day, sort of in the couple of years after the US Open, and looked like she's having a time of her life.
I think in a perfect world, we don't live in one, but if Emma could create her perfect world, I think she would look back on the past year or so as kind of like a reloading phase, and hopefully she can look back on the surgery she had as more things she did in the earlier part of her career to make sure that maybe the latter part of her career, or the second half, however you want to put it, is better from a health standpoint. Because I really do think that's the major thing, one of the major things that is holding her back from playing that top 10 level tennis that we saw in 2021 and parts of 2022. In Auckland, her opening match against Alina Gabriela Ruse, or Roos. I'm in my own head about name pronunciations at the top of the year, so forgive me. But she equipped herself nicely. Got a win, which is always a good feeling when you're getting back on the court after a long layoff. And then the Svitolina match, I think, is an early contender for match of the Aussie swing on the women's side for sure. It had great point construction. Raducanu specifically showed me a dynamic part of her game that I had never really paid attention to or seen, which was great hands in the forecourt. Like a lot of points that she won was because of her hands at the net, volley skills, taking the ball on early. And she's still a really good watch. I just want to see more sustained health. And just the benefits of that could be on the court could be great for her, because if she's healthy and can stay the duration of a couple of matches in a row, it builds momentum and confidence. So yeah, I hope the best for her.
Yeah, I wish I had the same. I think a healthy Emma Raducanu who finds the kind of level she produced when she first kind of burst onto the WTA Tour at Wimbledon and then the US Open in 21, and certain tournaments in 22, even 23. I thought she was playing good tennis in Indian Wells last year until she ran to Swiatek. I think that it can only be good for tennis, regardless of how well she does. Like she is going to bring some great tennis for us to enjoy and make competitive matches, like with the Svitolina one.
She has watchability. I use that term on Twitter.
It's like I could think of three other very, very exciting Raducanu matches that I've seen, which is that US Open final with Fernandez. Love that match. I wish it. I mean, it was a lot less stressful for British fans because it was straight sets, but it didn't feel straight sets.
It was
even watching the replay, like it doesn't feel straight sets. There was that match that she had to retire from against Daria Saville, I think, in Guadalajara. That was like stupidly long, but it was brutal tennis. And then there was that Linda Noskova round one and Roland Garros in 22.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great, that match.
Yeah, that was a really, really good one. I remember watching most of that match and being impressed. Even though it was a scrap, I was impressed by Emma's ability to scrap, which I feel like is something that doesn't get talked about much. When she's healthy enough to take the court and she's really in these battles, she has a really good fighting spirit about her. And the dynamic part of her game, the ability to take the ball early and just have clean strikes on it, is a tough match for a lot of people. So yeah. Hopefully this is just the beginning of a good comeback season for Raducanu.
Yeah, that'd be good. I mean, here's a question, right? Which of these three players do you think is most likely? I'm not going to say any of them are probable by any means, but which of these three players do you think is most likely to win a second Grand Slam? Emma Raducanu, Sofia Kenin, or Bianca Andreescu?
I can't say all of them.
I mean, they're pretty even, right?
Yeah, I think if either one of them do it again, it's going to be a huge moment, because they've had such valleys amidst their peaks, which were winning those Grand Slams. So I think if I have to put a ballot or name in the fire, I actually think I would go with Sofia Kenin.
Okay.
A little tepidly, but I would go with Sofia Kenin just because I feel like of the three, she's the highest ranked now. She's not that far off from a seed in the near future at a Grand Slam, and she has a level of consistency in her game, just a hair better than what I've seen from Raducanu and Andreescu in the past 2 or 3 seasons. It's still a far ways away from where her 2020 level was when she won the Australian Open. But of the three, I would be least surprised if Sofia Kenin wins a major in the next year or two, given all she's gone through. Yeah, that
would make sense. And like, she looks like she's making really good progress, right? We saw that the Guadalajara semis, like back end of last year, a couple of other good results. And also Kenin does probably have the less injury concerns of the three. I know she was out for a bit, but there was a lot of other stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Another player who made a comeback in Auckland, who's had a lot of stuff to deal with, is Amanda Anisimova.
Kind of forgot about that. Good call. Yeah, she did make a comeback.
Yeah, it was like, hang on, she was the other player who was
There's one more. Her name has come up, but not really her.
in Auckland.
In Auckland that I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
Okay, well,
We'll get back to her.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so obviously lost to beat Pavlyuchenkova, which I thought was a good win straight out the gate. Pavlyuchenkova is a tough opponent.
Always.
And then unfortunately
The wheels kind of came off, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Bushkova can be really
she can not miss. Bushkova can go long periods of time without really missing on the tennis court, I found. And Anisimova is the right kind of player for that to frustrate in their game and kind of show the weaker parts of it. But was happy to see her name in a draw for sure. Very happy.
Yeah. So yeah, again, probably more of a bigger story if you're an American fan, or a tennis fan who has followed the game. Was very excited by seeing Anisimova breaking out in that 2019 French Open when she was 17, beating Halep. But then, if she really follows her story, the tragedy she's dealt with, yeah, I think any success is always good news.
And she's made a quarterfinal of a Grand Slam in the not so distant past, 2022 Wimbledon. Yeah, she beat Coco Gauff on the way to do that. So, yeah, I think there's still some good tennis in Anisimova left as well. And since we're talking about Americans that might be very American centric, there was another Emma who made an impact for me at Auckland, and her name is Emma Navarro.
Ah, yes.
Yes. She made the semifinals, losing to Coco Gauff pretty handedly, but Emma Navarro is a player that will be seated rather in the 20s at the Australian Open, and got tons and tons of wins last season at the ITF and WTA Challenger level, which I think speaks to, one, her level of dedication for wanting to get the best out of her game and getting wins underneath her belt. I've seen some people kind of knock her ranking and saying that it's inflated because of the ITFs and challengers, but she physically has to go out there and win those matches and go to the net and shake hands. So anytime you're getting wins at any level of the Women's Tennis Association, which encompasses more than just 250s and up, you're doing something right. And yeah, I think it's notable for her to get to a semifinal of another WTA 250 and see how far she can take, mixing it up with the elite of the elite. So yeah, that was another name I was pretty interested to see go far.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, Emma Navarro is kind of on my radar. I don't think I've seen her play. I don't think, or if I have, it wasn't particularly memorable. As you said, she's been mainly playing the ITFs and challengers, which aren't really televised. Unlike the ATP Challenger Tour. The storm's coming.
Maybe that means she's the next winner of the Australian Open. An omen.
Here's the thing, though. Like, that's a really, really good story. She's seeded on her Australian Open debut, which is amazing. And she's obviously got to the Auckland semis. And for me, that makes her a name to watch in the Australian Open draw.
Would agree.
I think that's kind of ticking the boxes of someone who could maybe make a deep run and make a name for herself out the blocks, which would be exciting to see. But I haven't seen her game. For all I know, maybe there's a right, and maybe she's the ultimate vulture.
Maybe there may be some merit to it. Maybe she's just building. I think she's a part of the 23 and under crew. She's not an elder statesman in tennis terms at all, but she is most known for getting a consistent wild card at the WTA event in Charlotte because her father owns that event. So I shouldn't say that's the most notable thing, but it is a part of what she's known for, because you can kind of expect to see her name in that draw the past couple of years. And I believe she won a NCAA title here in the college system. I don't know where.
Oh yeah, that's right. The college player, right?
Yeah, she's a college player. Yeah.
I don't know which face that was supposed to be. That's the thing.
I think it was the one on the left. It might have been the one on the left when you heard that, when you heard the lightning.
I mean, I can do the creepy laugh hyena from Lion King. I'm not going to do that right now. Shout
out to our producer for just having that picture up and ready.
Yeah, do you have that saved somewhere just in case it's useful? Moving on. I just want one question, like, just come into my head. Is obviously we're talking about Emma Navarro getting a lot of points from the lower fringe of the tour. Someone else who got a lot of I don't know what this is about. Someone else who's been doing very well on the ITF tour, but's not quite been showing up on the WTA tour, probably because of maybe age restrictions, is Brenda Kvitova, who obviously got to Auckland. I think she won a match, then played Gauff in the second round.
She qualified and played golf. Yeah, she gave her
Oh,
all she could
qualified
handle
and
for
played
about.
golf.
Yeah, she gave her all she could handle for about 20 minutes or so. I actually have the tweet in my drafts that said something to the effect that Frutovitova is going to be a name we all have to get comfortable or more comfortable pronouncing.
Yes, I think
but
someone
that was
did do that.
really that was during the 20 minutes where she looked like she was going to win that match, and then the next 20 or 30, it didn't look that way.
Something similar happen? Because one Brenda Kvitova match I've watched was a match from either I think it was Guadalajara. It was Guadalajara or Monterrey, the tournament that Sloane Stephens really, really likes. And she played Sloane in like the opening round, and similar thing happened for about 20 minutes. It was really, really competitive, and she was a break up on Sloane. This is number 2, by the way, Ghost.
Brenda is the younger
Brenda's
sister. Brenda is younger. Linda
She's
is
16.
Yeah.
And similar thing happened. She competed very well with Sloane, and then it kind of ran away with her. But she was a couple of years younger. She was 14 at that point.
That's insane.
Yeah.
14 years old playing professionally. I can't imagine what I was doing at 14, but it wasn't that.
No, it was the norm in women's tennis 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was super healthy, but anyway. But yeah, actually, probably a lot of things 30 or 40 years ago were not super healthy. Brenda Kvitova, and I guess maybe I answered my own question. I was like, what is it that, because obviously she's won a lot of ITFs last year, like a lot. Why has it worked better for Navarro and getting her further up the rankings? Is it the age restriction?
It might be the age restriction, and it just might be the lack of success at the WTA level, because I mentioned that Navarro got to the semifinals at the WTA 50 once again. So that wasn't her first venture. I believe she got to the semis or maybe quarters of Bad Homburg in the lead up to Wimbledon. And also she got a bunch of WTA points getting to the semis of San Diego after the US Open and 4th round of Guadalajara. So there's a chunk of points from Navarro that actually is at a more elite WTA level, whereas Frutovitova hasn't gotten that. So I think that's the main difference, really.
That would make sense. I realized we've probably spent a little bit too long talking about Auckland.
I was going to segue from Auckland and talking about a young teenager that may be hampered by the age eligibility rule, and then switch to Brisbane and talk about Mira Andreeva, because she kind of impressed me too in Brisbane.
Yeah, well, she did pretty well. I think let's go to Brisbane then. Andreeva. So before we get to the overall headlines from Brisbane, Andreeva, I think she got to the quarterfinals. She beat Samsonova pretty handily.
Very handily, yeah.
Was Samsonova injured or hampered, or was Andreeva able to defuse her?
All I can tell you is that when they went to shake hands, the commentator said that Samsonova was all out of sorts, which kind of sums up her game when she's off a little bit. It can be very off.
And then I think Andreeva then lost in straight sets to Noskova, which I didn't see. I heard
another teenager,
decently contested sets, 2 decently contested sets, but there were some people who were surprised at the result. I wasn't, because I'm kind of think Noskova is one of the next big things.
I think both of them are, really.
They both are.
I think that could be a match for the future, as they say.
Indeed. A bit like maybe seeing Gauff versus Swiatek in the very early days, like the 2019 era. But I don't think that happened on the main tour. But I think it happened in juniors at one point.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, Andreeva, really impressive. Again, quarterfinals of a big tournament. And 500 are kind of big tournaments in the WTA.
Yeah, she's she's taking incremental steps. I kind of like that process better than one breakout tournament and then you win it and then you're like, oh wait, this has happened, and then we kind of see what happens from. We've seen the trajectory that somehow takes players into. So yeah, she's both of them, Noskova and Andreeva, are like making splashes according to their talent in incremental ways.
Gauff did kind of the same thing when she was 15, 16, didn't
Absolutely. She? Yeah, which is why I've always kind of been on the team, if you will, of Coco, because I saw the fact that like it wasn't one huge result out of nowhere. And given what I've seen from players that do have those kind of big results out of nowhere, I'd rather it be incremental success than one huge trophy that came out of nowhere. So yeah,
those first couple of years of Coco Gauff kind of reinforced to me that even though I wasn't sure what her ceiling was, I knew her floor was very, very high.
mm-hmm.
And that was something like that was going to always serve her well. She was going to be at least top 20 for years. And now we know that like she's unlocked it.
Mm-hmm.
She's locked in top 10 for a while, provided
Fingers
she stays
crossed.
healthy. Provided she stays healthy. All right, Brisbane. So lots of good tennis happened in Brisbane. I enjoyed it immensely. Obviously, WTA 500. Lots of things to talk about. I guess before we get to the final, while we're kind of in the middle of the draw, let's talk about the other big headline, the other big comeback. Naomi Osaka, who, came back, beat Korpatch in straight sets, was looking comfortable until she got a bit nervous towards the end. And then she ended up having one of the matches of the year. Well, one of the matches of the Australian swing, like Emma and Svitolina did. The other comeback girl did with Karolina Pliskova, of all people.
Of all people. They have interesting head-to-head, actually, Osaka and Pliskova.
Yeah.
Especially in Australia. They played a couple of great three-setters in Australia.
They do have close matches, I guess, of all people, because Pliskova didn't really have a lot of form going into this.
Pliskova needs to tread lightly because she's actually, Pliskova's actually defending a quarterfinal at the AO, and a lot of her points for the last 52 weeks or so are riding there because the rest of her season she was kind of a non-factor, unfortunately. So, but either way, that match was great. Osaka and the comeback seems to be right on. I know it's a small sample size with only 2 matches, but that sample size of the 2 matches plus the training videos she's released, it makes me encouraged that she's going to have an incrementally good year. I don't want to go all on out and say that she's going to be a Grand Slam champion this season. It could happen. I would love to see it, but her level right out of the gate is showing me that if she is comfortable and healthy and committed and in a good place mentally, she can hang with most of the best, if not all the best on tour right now with her game style. It's still very, very, very good.
Let's face it, Osaka's game style beats anyone on any given day.
It can. She can knock the racket out of your hand pretty easily.
Yeah. And I think having her in the mix, it's what I really want from 2024. I've said on the Ground Pass podcast with Anastasia, like Osaka's one of my stories of 2024 that I've said that new tennis fans should be following. And this event in Brisbane has made me very optimistic, like you, that she is going to be a factor now this year. Not predicting slams just yet. I think that's it. She could do it. She's got the level to do it. But I would say it's pretty more likely to come US Open than in Australia. But we'll have to see, because once Osaka gets past the 4th round, she ain't losing if she gets that far.
Yeah, Isabella is in the chat saying she did not expect Osaka to look that good this soon, and part of me agrees with that. The other part is like, she's Naomi Osaka and she's a 4-time Grand Slam champion for a reason. You don't get to those kind of heights of the sport and former world #1 without knowing what to do on a tennis court and how to how to inject your game onto the court, because there's so many different ways to play tennis, and the way that Osaka plays tennis is a very aggressive and dominant force and a style of play on the court. And if she's doing it and clicking on the right cylinders and moving well, and like I said, in a good space, a lot of people would be scared.
I think she scares the current top 4 on the WTA right now.
Yeah, she's beaten all of them. She's beaten Swiatek. She's beaten Sabalenka before. I'm not sure about Rybakina. I'm not sure. And she's beaten Coco before. So, I mean, they've all been at different stages of their career, but at least she knows she's walked to the net, and which I feel like is crucial. I say this all the time on this channel. When you walk to the net and shake hands as a winner, there's a big thing that happens there in that kind of small thing, and she's done that against the top 4.
I think she's been beaten. Swiatek and Gauff have beaten her.
Yes, vice versa.
Yeah, I think Sabalenka's beaten her as well. Has she?
Maybe,
I don't know
possibly.
the head-to-head. I know she beat Sabalenka on her way to winning the 2018 US Open.
Very
Very
true.
young
Yeah.
Sabalenka, but or no, not actually, because I think she's only a year older than Sabalenka. But anyway,
It was we didn't know what we know now about Sabalenka, so that's fair.
yeah. So I think, I think having her in the mix, I think that would just be an amazing sort of top 5 to have. And suddenly we'd be, I think if she was there, we'd start to be comparing the WTA now to the WTA of 20 years ago.
Not so fast, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see
Okay,
it.
we need a few more players in the mix there, because 20 years ago was like 10 to 12 players.
Yes,
But
yes. I get the gist. I would feel that way too. I'd love to have her closer to the top 10, top 5 than where she is now. And I think she's coming for it in her own time.
yeah, in her own time. We're not rushing her to it. On the other hand, if you want to win the Australian Open and blow us away, go for it. Okay, I guess we're kind of dancing around the what I think is probably the biggest story from Brisbane, which is the final.
Yeah.
I went into that final expecting it to be 2 competitive sets at least, probably more likely a 3-setter because of how much both players kind of carved through the draw. They were clearly the best. Like, there was something about Sabalenka and Rybakina that set them apart from the field. I did not expect a beat down.
Is that what we got?
And I didn't expect it to be the beat down the way round it was.
You expected, if there was a slight chance for a beat down, you would have thought Sabalenka would have beaten down Rybakina?
Yeah, because that was my gut, but that was my gut instinct, right?
Yeah.
As you know, it's Australia. Sabalenka won last time, and Sabalenka is one of the top 2 in the world, and Rybakina had been a bit patchy in the second half of 23. And I completely forgot, of course, the last 2 times they played, Rebecca straight setted her. And actually, Rebecca's won at least one set in every match they've played.
Did they played at WTA finals in Cancun, and who won that match?
Oh gosh, that's a point. I forgot about that match.
I think Sabalenka won that in straight sets.
Won that match because she got, yes, that's right, because she got out the groups and Rybakina didn't.
Yeah. I have to say, I love this picture, by the way. It is Big Babe Tennis finals personified, and it's like a lot of different things happening at once that I really appreciate about women's tennis. You have the Big Babe part, because they're both really statuesque women that take big cuts at the ball and aren't afraid of hitting winners. And then you have a nice trophy for the champion. I love that trophy aesthetically, and the runners-up trophy is actually pretty nice too. So, and they're both top 4 players in the world. Like, yeah, hopefully it's a symbol of what's to come in women's tennis, because that wasn't a great final from competitive standpoint. Obviously, straight set 6-love 6-3 is not, that doesn't come across the screen as super entertaining, but it's an impressive level that shows where Rybakina is, I think. So.
And it was 6. Had Rybakina had a bad service game in that second set, it could have been a 6-1 or 6-2 second set. That was it was that dominant. Jean's saying that actually Sabalenka won in 3 in the WTA finals, and now that's made me remember the match, because that actually was quite chaotic.
Yeah, wasn't it like one of the ones we had to stop and start because of the rain?
Possibly, yeah. So it was a difficult one. So yeah, Rybakina still won a set in every single match they've played.
When are they going to? Never mind. I was going to ask something about the flag, but that's going to put me on a tangent.
No, that's not getting into that right now. I think it's going to be several years before that happens. So with the rivalry, even though Sabalenka's up in the head-to-head, I think she has to fight harder to beat Rybakina than vice versa.
Yeah, there's something so interesting about the dynamic of their matchup, because one looks so effortful and the other looks so effortless, but essentially they have the same idea of how they want to win points, but they go about it in very different ways aesthetically, just from looking at their games. Sabalenka takes huge swipes at the ball, but it looks like there's a high amount of effort being put into it with the way that she wants to attack the ball with the top spin and pace, whereas Rybakina, who hits a little bit flatter, it allows her to hit smoother, but the ball still goes through the court with a high amount of pace. And yeah, that juxtaposition of all out attack and then kind of smooth attack is interesting to watch. Like their last couple of matches have been some very good live watches and playbacks if you watch the highlights or so. So yeah, again, like I said, not competitive, but a great showcase of what the level of women's tennis can be. And it shows that like these top four players, Rybakina, Coco Gauff, in her own right, Swiatek, and Sabalenka, when they're playing well, even amongst themselves, they can wipe the other off the court. If they're playing well and the other one's just having a bad day, they can win. And I think that's awesome for women's tennis.
I think producer makes a fantastic point, by the way.
Sabalenka won the first 4 and 3 sets, culminating in the Australian Open. But a bit like Sinner Medvedev, Rybakina has turned the tide. Okay, wow, that's a really good point. I hadn't caught that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I hadn't thought of that either. But the minute you said it, like, yes, that seems to be what's going on here. And yeah, and actually, do you know what? As much as the set was very one-sided, that match was very one-sided, I was super impressed by Rybakina because I've watched a lot of Rybakina matches where she somehow manages to win despite her first serve is 50%. Her forehand isn't quite there. They were both on. She was serving stupidly high first serve percentage, like 80%, I think, at one point. And then her forehand was that wonderful combination of precision and power that when it clicks just looks gorgeous. And that's the only way I can really describe it. It's just, when it bounces and it's like, that's way in front of the court, but it's still placed so perfectly and it's got so much pace coming off it. No one can do anything. And if you want to show someone a showcase of Rybakina tennis, that was the match.
I think there is a certain bounce. You used that word just now. There's a certain bounce in her step that looks much different than just a couple of months ago, because we know like tennis is a revolving kind of door. There's an off season, but it's really not that long. But just a couple of months ago, she looked kind of tired and labored, even in between points. Not to the point where it looked like she was injured, but it didn't look like she was having the most fun out there. And she's a hard person to kind of really get a gauge on as far as what's going on in their head, because she keeps such an even keel demeanor. But I think the first serve percentage is kind of proof that she has a little bit more bounce in her step, because Rybakina is very tall. If she is getting up to the ball and she's actually has the liveliness in her feet and her legs, her serve is going to be doing damage, and it's going to kind of be one of those things that is by you before you actually have time to react. And Sabalenka experienced that. So yeah, if she has a bounce in her step and is feeling pretty good and not bogged down by having to play last minute matches because the WTA scheduling is so horrid, or having to go on and off the court because they chose to play in Cancun in October, she's a force if she's feeling good, and she showcased that. So yeah, I think that she is a threat at the Australian Open, possibly the threat. And I'm interested to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, I'm in the same place as that. I think Rybakina's performance, her result, because she dropped 15 games in the whole tournament, has made a lot of people sit, including myself, sit up and take notice. And if Rybakina's on, I don't know who can stop her.
She does have that kind of aura. She really does. I mean, that makes her very interesting for the Australian Open. I don't know if it's too early to segue into that.
Let's talk United Cup first.
United Cup, okay.
Before we go United Cup, are there any other stories from Brisbane that you want to make sure we get covered? We've talked Andrea, we've talked Osaka, we've talked Sabalenka and Rybakina.
Did we miss any of the semifinalists that Sabalenka Rybakina beat?
I mean, we didn't Sabalenka, to be honest, but yeah.
I mean, because Sabalenka playing well here isn't super surprising to me. I'm happy for her. Well, I should say I'm a little surprised at how much she did capitulate in that match. So I think it's about 70-30% in that matchup, 70% Rybakina just being untouchable, and 30% Sabalenka just not being there and not having the wherewithal to like slow down the momentum of the match. And that does worry me just a tad with Sabalenka. When things go bad, they can go bad quickly. And there are a couple of moments, not in the not so distant past, where things have gone pretty sour for her pretty quickly. I'm thinking about the semifinal against Muhova at Roland Garros, semifinal against Ons, the final of U.S. Open. All three of those matches, she was in a great position to take charge, and then when it went left quickly. So if there's one thing that makes me nervous about like potentially calling her another Grand Slam champion and a 2-time Grand Slam champion, it's that. So yeah, that's what I have to say about Sabalenka.
I think that's worth noting for sure, and I think I actually share a lot of your views. It's made me question a few things, and it's made me realize, with help from others like yourself pointing it out, that there seems to be a pattern emerging here.
Mm-hmm.
Jay on X is
hey Jay
is wanting to mention that Ostapenko won the doubles
with Kitchenok, I believe.
Coming off a decent singles run where she narrowly lost to Azarenka amid some umpire controversy, or at least controversy on Ostapenko's mind, not necessarily everyone else's.
Right. And that happens a lot.
And potentially wearing the best outfit her provider's actually given to her.
She looked great. I don't know if our producer has a picture of it, but she looked great in that kind of lavender and white pinstripe at the top, and then kind of some people were calling it like business up top, party down below, but it actually looked really good on her. And I think she is somebody that, again, nobody's going to want to be thrilled to see her in their section of the draw. And Azarenka kind of summed up Ostapenko very nice in the on-court moment I saw. Like Ostapenko has proven time and time and again why she's never really to be counted all the way out. I don't think she'll ever be a week in, week out kind of player on the tour. There's definitely going to be moments where she loses to players and you're like, how did that happen? But that's her style of game. When it's off, kind of similar to what we were just talking about with Sabalenka. When it's off, it goes off pretty ginormously. But when it's on, it's one of the best out there on the tour and hardest to keep up with. So yeah, Ostapenko put in a pretty decent week, I would say.
Yeah, she had a good week, and I think, double success is always going to be a boost. I think she's going to be pretty happy with that. As is Kitchenok, and they are one of the premier doubles tides on the WTA tour right now. Yeah,
3 bounce, 3 bounce, 3 bounce. The ball bounced, 3 bounce, 3 bounce.
No, it did not.
It did not. It did not.
Oh dear. To answer your question, Jean, I don't think Azarenka is a doubt. I think, she did seem to tweak a hip right at the end, but I think she tweaked it sort of near enough at the end that it wasn't going to be a problem. Something similarly, like I remember when Andy Murray thought he tweaked something at Wimbledon right at the end of a match or right at the end of a break, and we were worried about him for a minute, but obviously he came back out and played the next day and he was fine. I think something similar will be in this case, where I think Azarenka will go and get the treatment she needs. She hasn't had enough time to aggravate it, and I think she'll be playing the Australian Open.
Hope she does. So she plays well there almost every year. I can think of an Azarenka match that's rewatchable almost every year at the Australian Open that she's been in. Whether win or lose, she's a good one.
I do think, like, when you think about Azarenka potentially being a contender at the Australian Open, I think, wouldn't it not be wild for someone to win the Australian Open 11 years after you previously won it? And then I remembered Rafael Nadal exists.
And Serena Williams, because she did that at the French Open. So yeah, I think it's a testament to just how good the era that she came in through was and how high that level is and how good of a tennis player she is. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if we look up and Azarenka's in the second week of I was going to say the French Open of Australia. Let's
talk about the United Cup. Probably isn't much to talk about in comparison to the actual WTA tournaments.
Because I didn't like the outcome ultimately, so we don't have to talk that much about it.
I don't think anyone liked that outcome unless they were German.
Yeah.
But there was also, I also think actually, if you took that, if it was just a WTA tournament, it would actually be it would be a really, really imbalanced 250 tournament or a 500 that didn't get that many people entering it for some weird reason.
Yeah, it was like Swiatek and then the rest of the tour, kind of.
Like
Sakari,
players: Swiatek, Pegula, Vondrushova, Sakari, Haddad Maia was there, Zhang Qinwen was there, Caroline Garcia was there. and Angelique Kerber was using it to make a comeback. Other than that, there weren't that many. Leila Fernandez, she's a big name to us.
Is Kerber? Yeah, she is. She is. I forgot that she was at the United Cup. Is Kerber? She's not ranked currently. Well, now she will be after United Cup, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't believe she had a ranking.
So how did she get into that tournament and use it as a comeback?
She used her protected ranking of 31.
Okay. Because if she's 31 in the world, then that puts her with Tatiana Maria. Got it.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of any other Germans.
Tatiana Marina was the backup player.
Gotcha. And then Laura Siegmund was the doubles.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Like Island Tomjanovic did the same thing for Australia. She ended on her protected ranking of 33.
Okay. Got it.
And well, I think we'll come back to that as a separate issue around Australian tennis at the minute anyway. But well, actually, I think from a player's standpoint, I would say there are obviously two players that I can think of immediately that stand out as a story. So let's jump to someone you've already mentioned, Angie Kerber. Obviously helped guide the United Cup to. I say she helped guide the United Cup to victory.
I was going to say, did she? She kind of made it a little bit harder for him.
She played 5 matches and won one of them. But to be fair, the one she did win actually
was crucial.
The final because that was the one tie that Zverev lost.
Yeah.
And it was also probably the tie she had the best chance of winning against Tomjanovic, who was going with a very similar record. That was a weird section of the United Cup draw.
That Kerber, man, she will always find a way to make sure she's relevant in some kind of way. Yeah. She's the only kind of player I could think of that could lose all of her matches and still put her hands on the trophy at the end of the week. She's that kind of player. She just hangs around.
I think the Kerber hate's coming out, isn't it?
Sorry.
Check yourself, Miles. Honestly, everyone accuses you of being an Iga Swiatek hater. Is like, please, the man. He has no negative emotion for anyone except Angie Kerber. Okay, I'm going to bounce this out. I'm one of those because I quite like watching awkward tennis players. I quite like watching Kerber, because I quite like the counter punching she brings, and that sort of tenacity.
She makes a great match. I have to give her that. Like she is scrappy, and the defensive skills bring out some of the best parts of women's tennis. So yeah, I mean, she's never been somebody I turn on my television for, but I have to give her credit and say that she makes a good match when my television just happens to be on.
Yeah, and I think she'll be happy enough with that. That's how her comeback went, even though maybe in terms of results, she was probably one of the weaker comeback queens.
Yeah, comparative to Rybakina, Osaka, Anisimova, and it was Kerber down at the bottom. But we move forward, and she didn't really move forward that much in her match against Swiatek, but
she did for 7 games. 7 games, she made it really, really competitive.
Yeah,
and kind of diffused Swiatek a little bit. I don't know if you watched that match.
Somebody said that she was loving Iga's pace, and then as soon as the person said that, it fell off. It like the wheels fell off.
Yeah. Well, what happened was basically she had break points against Iga at the 2-all game and the 3-all game, and Iga was actually not playing badly, but Kerber was actually absorbing and redirecting pace like she does, and seems to be one of the few players who can do that against Iga.
Mm-hmm.
But then Iga turned on the afterburners.
Yeah.
She got a confidence boost from saving those break points and went, I'm done playing.
She looks great. I love that she has that kind of I'm done playing attitude about her. And she showed it against Caroline Garcia. I called that match here. It was an awkward match because I don't think either of them were playing their best at the same time. But eventually, Iga was able to take advantage or take hold of that match and never let go. But she comes out of the United Cup as obviously she's number 1 in the world, so she was going to be a threat to lift a major title just by that alone. But just visually watching her game, seeing the tweaks she's made to her serve and the aggression that was there, but just seems even more so there at the beginning of a fresh new year, she looked great. She looked great.
And she put away 3 top 20 players, which isn't bad. I mean, she put away Zhang Qinwen, who's a player who's given her a lot of headaches in the past. Same with Beatrice Haddad-Maia and Caroline Garcia.
Yeah,
all three players who she's had tough matches with and tough losses to.
they all beat her. They all beat her in that season where she got a 37 match win streak, didn't they?
I don't think Zhang's beaten her.
No, yeah, but she took a set off of her at Roland Garros. That's what I remember. Yeah,
that's what happened. And she's taken a set off of her somewhere else, I think Stuttgart last year.
Okay, maybe.
So that she can make things awkward. Haddad-Maia obviously beat her in 2022 in Canada in a really, really tight match, and then made that French Open semi-final last year super tight. And obviously Garcia she beat her in Warsaw on clay, and then she beat, I think it's Swiatek's only proper clay loss. I'm not counting that Rybakina retirement from last year. In like the last few years, like last couple of years for Swiatek, and then obviously that Beijing match they had was
really good.
Yeah. So she put away opponents that she's had trouble with before, but she didn't play anyone in the top 10. I think actually, to be fair, actually none of the top 4 contenders at the Australian Open played anyone else in the top 10 other than Rybakina and Sabalenka playing each other.
I mean, but I feel like that's not the world's worst thing, because I mean it is the beginning of a new season. I don't think any of them would have loved, and that's kind of the benefit of being highly ranked. Like you benefit from not having to play the best of the best at the beginning because you are the best, So I think that's fair enough. I think all of them got tested enough going into a Grand Slam to see where their level is, to imply the things that they were working on in the off season, and everybody we've talked about that's in the top 4 got to the final of the tournament that they were in. So
and actually maybe although none of them faced top 10 opposition, like Iga did play maybe some more trickier players along the way, trickier players, because obviously Azarenka could have been Azarenka and Kasatkina could have been banana skins for Sabalenka, and
Kasatkina shouldn't be a banana skin for Sabalenka.
Depending on how Sabalenka's playing that day.
Yeah, if she's having one of those everything is off kind of days, Kasatkina is the worst, but Kasatkina also gives her tons of time, so she would have time to kind of correct the ship if she just played well enough or played long enough in the match. But I see what you mean.
Yeah, I know. Again, Kasatkina's one of those players I quite like watching.
I was going to say you were giving some credit to Kasatkina, which is totally fine by me.
Yeah, I want to give, and obviously Svitolina was really tricky for Coco Gauff, as we mentioned. So really, really strong performance in the United Cup, I'd say, for Iga Swiatek. Maybe she had the tougher draw, as it were, out of the options. Apart from it depends on like whether it evens out because Sabalenka and Rybakina had to play each other. But really, I think Iga was probably the women's star of the United Cup. Although there was one other player who did go unbeaten in multiple matches. 2 other players who went unbeaten in multiple matches in the United Cup.
Did Sakkari lose?
Sakkari did not lose. She went 3-love. She went 3-0 in matches.
A good name to kind of, well, I wouldn't say a good name, a name to circle if you're looking for outside picks at the Australian. And who was the other person that didn't lose a match in their singles?
Yeah, Katie Bolter.
Okay. I've seen her play, but her game hasn't stuck with me. But a win over Pegula is always a good win because Pegula's a tough out, like she always says. So
that was a really good win because I think she was a break or even 2 breaks down the second set, and she was a set and a break, maybe even a double break down, and she came back against a top 5 player.
Our producer is taking some of the Sakkari confidence and taking it down a couple notches, but it's okay. I can see why. I can see why you would do that, though.
Okay, let's have a look. So, who did Sakkari play? She played Leylah Fernandez as her opener, which was I didn't see it, but I was watching the live score, and that looked like a tough match. That was a tough tiebreak that Leylah could have tiebreak set that Leylah probably could have had won before the tiebreak, and then kind of Sakkari had to hold on the second set, so it was a tough one with Leylah. The other match with Chile, Daniela Seguel was not going to be a challenge for her. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen Seguel play. Still haven't, because I was asleep for those matches. Wrong time zone, not because they were boring. And then the only other match was Kerber, who obviously...
I feel like if Kerber's playing well, Sakari could have headaches against her. So I mean, that's I'll put that under the umbrella of a good win for
It
Maria
was a
Sakari.
6-love, 6-3 win.
Yeah.
And I think the second set, Kerber started coming back at her a little bit, and Sakari had to kind of adjust to that. And that was in the quarterfinals as well. So, yeah, I would say positive week for Sakari.
Yeah. It doesn't take much to have a positive week for her, I think. I mean, she just had there were not to be rude, but there were just some definitely valleys in the past season for her. And that title in Guadalajara, some wins here at the United Cup, she could be well on her way to something. Not sure what it is, but something.
Yeah. All right. Well, we know that basically we've mentioned two words a lot: Australian Open. And the reality is, at this point in the year, even though we can talk about all the tournaments we want, the truth is that we are watching these with half an eye on the Australian Open. It's the same reason why when we watch Madrid and Rome, we watch them with one eye on Roland Garros. When we watch Eastbourne and Berlin, one eye on Wimbledon, Cincinnati and Canada, one eye on the US Open. Same thing here, especially since it's so close to the Australian Open. So, Miles and I have put together some power rankings of who we think we think the form book is for the field, ranking sort of most to least likely, most likely being at number one. I have already put a video out, or rather, John has put a video out of me going through my power rankings for the WTA, which you can watch. It's a 20-minute long video because I like to go into detail about my thought processes. But for those of you who just want a quick recap, we've got one to show you. Number 10, Ons Jabeur. Number 9, Caroline Garcia. Number 8, Maria Sakkari. Number 7, Marketa Vondrousova. Number 6, Elina Svitolina. Number 5, Jessica Pegula. Number 4, Coco Gauff. Number 3, Arina Sabalenka. Number 2, Elena Rybakina. And number 1, Iga Swiatek.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to show Miles's now? Now, Miles didn't make a video, but
I'm not that nice.
Yeah, but he has very kindly put it in a tweet for us, which you can find online. And my immediate reaction is, we've both got 8 of the same players in our rankings. There's literally only a couple of players difference between it. And then, of course, the order is slightly different. So,
should I go into my thought process?
Yeah. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start at the top of our rankings or the differences?
Let's go with some of the names that are on mine that didn't make it to yours, because there's a couple, right?
There are a couple. So the names that are on yours that are not on mine are Yelena Ostapenko and Zhongqin Wen.
I think both of them, there's a universe where Ostapenko and Zheng are lifting the Daphne Akhurst trophy in Australia. It is a wild universe to kind of pedal through, I have to admit. But Ostapenko showed me that there's still a level in her. Over the past couple of months, she showed me, because she got to the quarters of the US Open, she showed me that her level is aggressive enough to hit through anybody. And she also made the quarterfinals in Australia last year, beating Coco Gauff en route. So she has points to defend. There's something about the courts, if they're playing speedy, that gives her game all the advantage in the world. And she played well this past week in Brisbane. All the I was going to say controversy, but that's not how I've been taught to say it. All the controversy aside, she's familiar with Grand Slam tennis and how to play it, and she looks fit and ready to do it. It's just, having a good day for Ostapenko, and who knows when those days come. I feel like she just rolls out of bed and whatever happens.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Ostapenko. So she was an honorable mention on my list.
Okay. Okay.
So I gave 3 honorable mentions in my video. Ostapenko was one of them.
Hmm.
And the reason why I didn't put her in the top 10 was because she's Ostapenko.
Yes, and it's as much as she could win the trophy, she could lose in the first round to
Yeah,
somebody that you've never heard of, honestly. So,
exactly. And that's the problem. Like, I will always consider her for the top 10, but I have to see what everyone else's form like. And Ostapenko has to show me maybe that, like, maybe that she has a good week about a month before the slam rather than just before. But yeah, I think she's definitely got the tennis in her. I completely agree. But it's difficult to know when that tennis will show up. It's just not consistent, which is why I shouldn't make my top 10. But
mm.
I think if you are brave enough to put her in yours, I'm not going to argue with you because she does have the tennis.
I think the person coming in at 10 on my rankings does have the talent, and that's Zhang Qinwen. She just doesn't have the experience, and she actually shares a little bit of the Ostapenko mentality on court a little bit. Like, she wants to be the person out there dictating, and unfortunately she shares the ability for it to kind of go off and wayward.
Yes.
But I think she'll have a great amount of crowd support. I remember years ago the Australian Open was marketed as the Grand Slam of the Asia Pacific, and Chinese players do bring out good fans in Australia often, which I love to see. And she's been playing well. She got to the finals of the Elite Trophy a couple of months ago. She poses problems to somebody like Iga. So we don't know where she might end up in the draw closer to Iga. So that could be a possible matchup. And yeah, she showed some good form at the United Cups. And I generally like the way that she goes about her tennis and how she swings, and I like watching her. So she kind of got there off of recency bias and just my bias in general.
I think Zhang is a player I wish I put as an honorable mention. And
Hmm.
actually, she was in contention for my top 10 because I agree with you. She's got the tennis. The court should suit that style of tennis. And obviously, she's
Hmm.
going to have the crowd support. I mean,
Hmm.
Australia also tends to give wild cards to Chinese people. So,
Hmm.
um, uh, the the main thing, the reason why I didn't put her in was she's not got past the last 16 yet in her career in Australia.
Hmm.
Um, and the other thing is that she did, although she's caused Iga problems before, she didn't this time in a
Hmm.
United Cup. And but I think she might have done it for a couple of games. I think she did break her, but then Iga came roaring back.
It was a straight test loss. So I mean, that's
Yeah,
fair. Yeah.
that's fair, yeah. But I think she was a breakup actually. But the I guess it was. I think she's going to do great things in 2024.
Hmm.
Maybe it's just too soon to say it. And I think also there's an element of wanting it to happen because this would be a wonderful place for everything to come together for Zhang Qinwen.
Hmm. I
Uh,
agree.
yeah, so it's then some optimism. I'm not going to disagree with you because she was very close to getting into mine. I think the two that are on mine that are missing from yours, Ons Jabeur is on there, is on mine. She nearly
Unfortunately,
wasn't.
unfortunately, the way I said that there's a universe that I feel like I could live in where Queen Win and Ostapenko are lifting the trophy. Unfortunately, I cannot see Ons Jabeur lifting that trophy. I would love to see her lift a Grand Slam trophy. I just would be very surprised if it's this one. So
Uh,
I have nothing to go off of, really. Like, she hasn't played a warm up yet. Is she playing in this week's warm up in Adelaide?
no, she's not playing a warm up, and that does hurt her. And
So
I nearly didn't put her in. But the thing is that the last time I wrote off Jabeur, she proved me wrong.
she lost. Somebody said she lost today.
Uh,
Oh, sorry.
on
That's something else. I think that's something else. Yeah, because Ons
Danielle
didn't.
Collins.
Yeah. Daniel Collins. Sorry, got us sidetracked. But yeah, I love Ons's game. I love Ons as a person. She's an easy person to root for me. The Australian Open of 2024 seems highly unlikely is where she's going to have her best success. I'm not saying
Yeah.
she's going to lose first round, but I couldn't imagine her lifting the trophy with such little to go off of.
I guess the way I do my rankings, I have an element of if they're not going to win, how far are they going to get?
Mm.
And I think I can see Jabeur making second week, and I'm more
I look
confident saying that's going to make second week.
I look at it as who has the power to lift that trophy. Sometimes those trophies are heavy, Nick, and the players have to have the power. Either they have the power, and we've seen it be displayed for large chunks of time, like speaking of power, like Rybakina and Iga and Coco and Sabalenka, they have power. Those are reigning, if not reigning, very very not so distant past Grand Slam champions. Whereas some of the other ones, they have the power coming in, like Svitolina. I don't think a week ago I would have put Svitolina in my top 10, but watching the way she really took it to Coco and she beat Raducanu and got to the finals of another tournament, recency bias kind of puts her in there, and knowing what she's done at Grand Slams before lets me know that she has the power to lift that trophy. Is she going to? Not sure, but that's why she's somewhere in the mix,
Yeah, I could see that, and I completely agree. Svitolina is in the mix, and she does have the power for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other name that's in my rankings that's not in yours, and I must say I did make this ranking before I saw this stat, was Marketa Vondrousova, because I didn't realize she's only won one match since the US Open, and that was at the United Cup against.
I did not know that stat either, and she still didn't make my power rankings top 10. So
I basically went off remembering how she was immediately after Wimbledon, and she was getting to the quarterfinals of everything she was in, more or less, quarterfinals, last 16. And I thought Vondrousova was consistently bringing level. And she did win a match in the end. And I think, that was the most recent match. So maybe that will be a momentum swing for her to get some more matches under her belt on Australia. She's a disruptive player. She is a Grand Slam champion. I don't particularly want to dismiss her outright. And I think when I looked at her and I went, if she stabilizes, she's a much more stable bet than someone like Garcia or Sakkari.
My thing with Vondrousova is a couple of things that comes to mind. She's the kind of player, if she gets somebody who's in form that we may have talked about in this episode today, and she gets them in the first or second round, I think she is very susceptible to a upset, and that does not bode well for me putting her into the power rankings. And then also, history has shown that she likes the odd years, not the even years. And 2024 is an even year. So if you think about the years she's had really good success, 2019 French Open final, 2021 Olympic runner-up, silver medal, and then 2023 Wimbledon champion. I would not be surprised if she struggles this year. I'm gonna keep it to Australia. I wouldn't be surprised if Australia is not the best slam of the season for her. So yeah,
she wasn't super convincing United Cup. I wouldn't be surprised either, but I prefer to be on the optimistic side where possible.
I feel you. If there's an indication in the storm that she is absolutely coming for the Australian Open trophy, so I don't know. I mean, Mother Nature knows more than me, apparently.
Ghost in the chat is also suggesting her next tattoo if she wins the Australian Open. All right. I think rather than going through every single player, I think the most sensible thing to do is to maybe look at the differences at the top of our ranking, because although we've got the same 4 players in the top 4, same players in the top 5, although we agreed on number 5 and who's safely number 5.
Look at that. We can agree.
We can agree on that. The order is different, and I find that interesting.
I think, should I go as to why Rybakina is my number 1?
I was going to say, before you do that, there's been something in the chat which some people are very surprised that. Oh no, actually no. Right. Some people are very surprised that I've put Sabalenka ahead of Gauff, and I didn't think that would be the reaction.
That's why I put Coco ahead of Sabalenka. I think I think it's a small difference, but enough to give Coco that edge, because Coco won her final. Sabalenka did not, and although Sabalenka is a defending champion, I would not be surprised if Sabalenka hits herself out of the tournament. I feel like Sabalenka hitting herself out of the tournament is a higher, what's the word? A higher probability than Coco Gauff getting hit out of the tournament. Sabalenka can hit herself out. Somebody would have to hit Coco Gauff out. And I feel like there's a small difference in that. That's why Coco Gauff gets 3 instead of 4 on my list.
That makes sense. I'm still going with Sabalenka ahead of Coco because I think Coco didn't have a stronger field to deal with.
Mm.
I think Brisbane is more relevant as a tournament in terms of conditions. And Sabalenka's the defending champion. And then I also said there might be some more questions around Gauff's matchup with the other three. It's not necessarily a dead set she's going to win. It's going to be a bit more of a battle. So that was what kind of made me put Gauff at 4. But none of these people would be a surprise if they won. Right. So, but Sabalenka, Sabalenka's result in Brisbane knocked her off. So I'm going to say this now. I think I said this in the video as well. Had the day before the final, I was going to put Sabalenka as my number 1. And then the final happened. And
you would have put Iga at number 2?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the thing that makes Iga not number 1 for me is that I've seen her play at Australia the past 2 years and really intensely watch those matches. And I don't think that court setup is the one that is the most advantageous for her, because we've seen her get spanked off the court in 2022 against Collins and Rybakina. I think both of those were straight set losses. And I can, like I've been using this phrase all day, I can live in a universe where that happens again for Iga. It would be something if it happens 3 years in a row, but I also would not totally be surprised, because that's kind of the Achilles heel. Quick court, big hitter, and it could be a big hitter that's not even on this power ranking. I guess has a big hitting day, So
here's what's made me more optimistic about Iga. She, first of all, this is not as bad a condition for her as Wimbledon.
Agree.
Also, her Australian Open losses, if we look at since 2020,
Kontaveit got her right in 2020, right?
Got her in a very close match. It was she was so close to making a first Grand Slam quarterfinal very early on, and that would have made people said, well, maybe that French Open would win later in the year. Might have been that of a surprise.
Yeah.
2021 real battle with Halep. That was a really good match. 2022, I think she was out of gas against Collins because she'd had a really tough fight with Kanepi the round before. And she wasn't quite there. She was still building. She was one step away from being the Iga that we now know. It was a small step. She took it a couple of weeks later. And also, that was a semi-final, right? Iga's the semi-finalist at Australia. So that suggests that maybe the courts aren't that much of a problem for her if she's got the right draw.
Fair enough.
Then 23 against Rybakina, that was a matchup issue on the surface, which is more going into what you're saying. But the other thing is Iga is kind of playing her best at the minute. She's on another streak. She's on a 16-match winning streak. And this is the best start to the year she's ever had. And right now, I think her patience in her game, I think the test is going to come as how she deals with her big rivals on a surface that doesn't favor her. So she dealt with Sabalenka and Gauff pretty well in the WTA finals in Cancun. That was a slower hard court in crazier conditions. I think that it's going to come down to how it happens on the day. But if it's like, given how much momentum Iga has in comparison to everyone else coming off the back of last year, and how she had a tougher field in the United Cup to deal with, that edged her for me, even though I will be honest, and it was very clear in the video, I kind of made a decision on the spot in the video because I still wasn't 100% sure I was going to go with it, even though my brain was screaming at me. But Rybakina just won Brisbane, and she dominated the field completely. And Brisbane historically has been much more relevant than United Cup or even Hopman Cup before it in terms of form. So I think I went with Iga as number 1 because watching the tennis she's been playing, it's very, very possible that she can turn around these matchups in Australia. Maybe it's a little bit of hope, and I'm kind of following the crowd a little bit, but also there's an element of Rybakina's just won in Brisbane, and we're going with a bit of recency bias.
I think Viola and I are feeling the recency bias just a little bit.
Yeah, it was a coin flip between the two, to be honest.
Mhm.
And I've decided, you know what, I'm going to go with Iga because she's the safer bet. Because also, which of them, going by your method, which of them is less likely to get knocked out in the first round? I don't see it happening to either of them, but you know what I mean. Like someone coming across them, like having a bad day.
Our producer is making note of my Sakari pick. Where
Yeah,
was she
you've
on
got her
yours?
higher than me. 8.
With 8? I think it's United Cup bias. It was something about seeing her play. Oh, and this. I'm a huge person for looking at gear changes at the top of the year. And Sakari, I'm not sure if this is actuality, because sometimes it's as easy as just dipping a racket in some new paint and your sponsor saying, hey, play with this racket. But I think Sakari has actually shifted to another Wilson racket called the Wilson Shift. And previously she was using a Wilson Ultra. And sometimes things like that really do give you that extra edge. So instead of Sakari getting to like the 4th round, maybe she might get to a quarter or a semi. And I feel like it is kind of time for Sakari to kind of do it or don't do it when it comes to Grand Slam success. And I wouldn't be totally surprised if she does it here, because there's a lot of Greek support in Australia, isn't there? And I don't know if she plays her best under the crowd, like really being for her. But it's kind of like a heart feeling thing, because I like Maria and I want to see her in the semifinals of another major, because she does play entertaining tennis. It's just that sometimes when she's tight, it's very hard to watch. So maybe we might get a free flowing, under the radar, but not really, because I'm still a top 10 seed kind of Maria Sakkari.
I think, I really liked how she looked in the United Cup. She looked very, very positive. Something else we have to bear in mind, her matchups with the top 4 aren't amazing right now.
If she has a good draw and some of these seeds that we're talking about as going far slip up, Sakkari can take advantage of that. I think she can.
Not to embarrass the producer, but I think a couple of those people are going to be seeded. Layla's definitely seeded. She's going to sneak in.
Kostyuk is not, and Kostyuk has beaten her as a Grand Slam. Andreeva will not be seeded, and Andreeva can definitely take out Sakkari if she's playing well. Raducanu, I think Raducanu has beaten Sakkari at a Grand Slam, the semis of the U.S. Open. So yeah, I don't think Sakkari would be thrilled at seeing those 3 names.
Yeah.
But if the draw gods are kind to her, which they might be, because she is kind of under the radar here, who knows? Australia does have Australia, because it's the Happy Slam. If you're feeling happy within the Happy Slam, sometimes you look up and you're like, wait, they won that? In the past, there have been Australias that we get to the final weekend and we're like, wow, that person wins their first Grand Slam for the first time in their career. I'm thinking Sofia Kenin, Wozniacki, although it was different, because it kind of been a long time coming. Who else has won Sabalenka won her first there. Maresma won her first there. There's been others. But
over the years. Kerber.
Yeah, Kerber, Azarenka. Yeah. So I mean,
Wozniacki.
Wozniacki. Yeah. I mean, it's possible. It's possible.
To answer our producer's question, 4 players from the top 32 have withdrawn: Bukova, Keys,
Bencic, Kvitova. Yeah.
Yeah, because
those are all contenders. Bencic has been to a quarter, I think, here, maybe. I don't know. Keys has been to a semifinal twice. Kvitova has been to a final, and Muhova has been to a semi. So those are players that have played well in Australia. So
and that means that Fernandez and Bushkova are going to be seeded.
Love that for me.
Yeah, it's pretty. Oh, I'm so happy to see Fernandez seeded at a slam again.
Yeah. She deserves it. She's been playing well.
Well, I'm sure we're going to be breaking down the draw and where it all happens when it all comes out, which is going to happen on Thursday, which will be 4 a.m. my time. So that would be 10 p.m. yours.
It'll be late. I'll probably have a glass of wine, and I might hop on YouTube Live to get my initial reactions out there into the ethosphere or tennis sphere of it all.
I will probably wake up and look at the draw and sort of bleary-eyed first thing in the morning, and then probably break it down after work at some point. But That's the plan, unless talking tennis gets me drags me on bleary eyed or something. But yeah, I think this has been fun. I think I don't want to break it down. Obviously, Biola sadly couldn't be with us on the stream today. Love her power rankings as well. Shout out for including Haddad Meyer. Definitely a name that was worth looking at as well. But hopefully we can get her on at some point. Agreed. Mukova being missing is a tragedy for the sport, Hector. Mukova, she's put an Instagram post up saying she hopes to be back in February, which would be wonderful, I think. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Miles. Probably went on a little bit longer than planned, but it's been good to kind of chat around Australian Open form and look back on what's been a really good week of tennis, actually. It felt kind of like a slam with all the tennis that was happening.
Yeah, it was tennis from sun up to sundown, really. And I've enjoyed talking about it with you too, Nick. It's always fun for us to chat, especially women's tennis. And thanks to our producer for opening up the space for me to talk once again here at Talking Tennis. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the Australian Open. It's always a great time to start off the new year.
It always is. Like, one of my favorite times of year is waking up and there's tennis on. That usually perks me up for the rest of the day.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be doing lots of coverage. Love to see some new subscribers as the stream has gone on. So thank you for joining us. If you are new, you want to keep following our content, please do. We will be doing the draw live on Talking Tennis when it comes out, which probably, various times throughout the world. So 4 a.m. GMT, that would make it, I think, 5 a.m. CET, and then sort of Eastern time, we're talking like 11 p.m. midnight. Midnight sort of time. So keep an eye on us anyway. We'll also be trying to bring you some plenty of live streams of the tournament of the Grand Slam, where you'll get us sort of sitting here and giving us our thoughts, giving our thoughts about it. And obviously keep tuned in for more WTA Weekly and ATP Weekly. If you didn't catch ATP Weekly earlier, it is on YouTube, so go and check out the catch-up video, because we had John and Damien sharing their thoughts on what happened in Brisbane and the United Cup and Hong Kong this last week as well. And we'll probably be doing some proper preview shows where we really dig into the draw for the WTA. If you're here for the WTA, fantastic. This is where all the WTA chat on the internet is at. And it's going to be great. So thanks for coming on, Miles. And thanks everyone else for joining. Take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.